Welcome to my podcast. Hey, this is Joyful. The Mindful Revolution has begun, and this is a raw journal of that fantastic movement. I have another interview lined up for today. Just a minute. A friend, Fred, is going to come over, and I think you're going to like listening to Fred. You know, I know this guy has a lot of stories to tell, so we'll see if we can just, have a conversation. But I'm excited about it. Thank you once again for listening, Brian, and enjoy. Thank you.
I had to go another year at Cal State Northridge.
That's hilarious. So,
I wanted to have a teaching degree.
You have this Bachelor of Arts in Oxford.
Well, it's on. It was
We're
then
gonna
on
need
a
to see
scroll.
something more.
I mean, it was on a parchment.
Cool.
You know,
You have it?
I should. God, I hope
You
I
should
do.
freaking have it.
Yeah. So anyway, so did that.
Well, good job. What was so amazing about that experience?
Just the place.
Yeah.
The place. I remember
I've never been.
About 10 years ago, I took my very, very good friend Peter there. I get as a gift to him. I said, for all the years you've been a very good friend. I said, and I've talked about this a lot. I said, I'm going to take you.
Mm-hmm.
And I paid for the trip. And I said, let's go. And he walked. And I'm 6'2". Peter's about here.
Way up there.
Big man.
Uh-huh.
And he's got a white beard, white hair.
Uh-huh.
And he smokes incessantly. Because it keeps him alive, because he's a narcoleptic, because the nicotine keeps him going.
Okay.
And he's walking around the campus. We walked into where there are 12 colleges that go to make up the University of Oxford. There are different there's Corpus Christi, Christ Church, Worcester, which is where I went, etc., etc., etc. And so I went to Worcester College and finally found my way back, because so much had changed, and got in, and there's a little gatekeeper at the front, and he says, yes, may we help you? And I said, I'm here to show my friend around to the campus. He said, well, I'm terribly sorry. He said, but this school is closed for matriculation, ergo graduation. So I said, I'm a graduate. I graduated from here in 1971. And he said, oh, did you really? With skepticism in his tone. And I said, outside of my window in my dormitory, I said, was a tree that always had red leaves. And he looked at me and said, my God, we cut that down 10 years ago. I said, yes, I probably so. He said, welcome. He said, old alumni are always welcome. I said, thank you. I walked into the campus with Peter, and Peter looked around and he says, my God, you went to school here? I said, Peter, on this side of the building, I said, these are all built in the reign of George II. I said, over here, these buildings are 13th century. This is where I lived.
Oh my gosh, you had to go to Oxford. That's the only place for you.
It was amazing.
Yeah.
Oh, God, Ethan.
I think the world just worked out right to put you
Ethan,
there.
I got to tell you, if you ever get a chance to go. Just as a tourist, just go. There's a library there called the Bodleian Library.
Uh-huh.
It's been around since the middle of the 16th century. And when you go in, you sign a waiver and a membership that you become a member of the Bodleian Library. And you can't take any books out of the building, but there's lots of reading rooms, so you can read them. And they have a little podium-like thing. And so when you get a book, you lay it down like this, and you turn the pages, and they give you little white gloves if the books are really old, so that you can read them.
Wow.
So I was doing some work on American history, American Revolution, and I put in a request for Benjamin Franklin's autobiography. I figured, well, they must have a copy of that. So he comes out and he looks. Would you wait a minute, Mr. Lemke? I said, yes, thank you. And he came out, puts this book in my, and it's an old book, I knew it was going to be, he puts it in front of me, and he gives me little white gloves. I said, all right, fine, great. So I go back to my little table, and I opened the book, and the book is about this big.
No way.
It's very small, maybe half again as large. I opened up the book, and I'm looking at it like this, and I got my little white gloves, and I turn the pages.
Mm-hmm.
I put the book down, I pick it back up again, and I walk back. Now, you got to remember, I'm about 19 or 20 years old.
Mm-hmm.
I walk back, and I give it back to the keeper of the library, and I said, don't you have a little bit younger copy? And he said, why, what's the matter, Mr. Lemke? I said, this is the manuscript copy. Do you know what that means? This is written in Ben's own hand. That's the only copy they have.
Bodleian.
The Bodleian Library.
Oh my goodness.
It's Ben's copy in his own hand. That's all they had. Poor babies.
Wow.
Does that tell you what that
So
place
that
was
gave
like?
you the shivers. Just
Well,
like,
it's giving me the shivers now.
I know,
when I
right?
was 19.
Yeah, yeah, that's
And I said,
magnificent.
this is all. He said, well, I'm terribly sorry, Mr. Lemke, but this is the only copy we have. And I said, okay. I said, I understand. So that was that.
I do want to go there. I
Yeah,
wonder
you really must.
I bet they don't. That was like what you said in the 90s.
No, I grabbed.
Oh, that was when you were a kid.
I was in.
So if you went with Peter,
Yeah.
did you go to that library again?
Yeah, I showed him where it was. Yes,
Oh, okay.
we went inside and looked around. I showed him everything around, all the rest
Yeah.
of it. Yeah. So, but it was quite the place. It was quite the place.
And you're a member.
And I am a member. And I still have I have slides to date this conversation. I have slides from that 3 years of Oxford.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so what was it like shifting and doing like, all right, one more year of university?
So I had to come back here. I didn't realize that was the case. And so when I came here and I applied for my teaching credential, they wouldn't accept my degree in history because it wasn't 4 years. So I had to take another year at San Fernando Valley State College. But that was the year that...
Was that like a college experience or just...
No, well, it was all right. I mean, I took it all seriously. I mean,
Yeah.
I wasn't flippant about it because while I was doing that, I was working for my teaching credential at the same time for the state of California. And that was the year, let's see, so he's talking 67, 69, 70, 71, 1972, 73, sometime around there. 72, I think it was. That was the year that San Fernando Valley State College came up to become, was brought up for its license to become a university, part of the
UCal.
UCal system. And there were going to be two names. It was going to be called either the University of California in the San Fernando Valley or University of California Northridge, CSUN.
Yeah.
We voted for CSUN, so I had the first diploma that says CSUN on it. But they didn't want that. There was a big debate that went on in the San Fernando Valley because it said it doesn't just serve Northridge, it serves all the San Fernando Valley, which was technically correct, but the name was like that.
Yeah, but honestly.
Yeah, it wasn't. So that's how we got the name. And then I got my teaching credential and I taught school for a year. In
1 year?
Yeah, 1 year because it was basically an armed camp. I mean, the Chicano movement was at its peak.
Yeah, where was it?
I taught over at Lincoln High School over in East LA.
East LA.
Yeah, and the Chicano movement was very, very big, and then they weren't too pleased.
That was in the 70s?
70s, yeah. Very, very big.
So you were like terrified going to school every day?
Well, I wasn't terrified so much, but these kids were older than I was.
Yeah.
So they were still in ninth grade. You know?
So that wasn't like the, coaching young minds to learn, molding young gentlemen
and there was
women.
and the other thing too was that we had to be careful not to insult. We were all that stuff again was just really finding its footing about being careful not to demean their ethnicity and all that other sort of stuff. And we want to study about Mexico and all that. So go back. I said, so go back. And they didn't want to hear that. Needless to say.
Yeah. That's such a...
Because I'm not a politically correct person. I think political correctness is lying.
Political correction can kind of hold things back, can it?
Well, yeah, terribly.
I definitely have some feelings that it does. It does that.
It's a lie. You have to make it work. You have to lie to yourself, and you have to lie about others to make it work, so you don't injure them or you don't insult them. And they're the ones who ultimately lose out. Because, they grow up in an atmosphere that's false. It isn't real. It isn't real.
Yeah, so people aren't allowed to teach them as they were taught. They have to teach them as...
Well,
you weren't allowed to come in there and be the type of teacher that you had.
No, I couldn't do that.
You weren't allowed to?
No, that was not tolerated. That wasn't tolerated. I would have been, and I was called in many, many
And that's
times.
kind of probably what you wanted to offer, right?
Well, because I knew that what they were asking was going to be a disservice to them because, as after you get past that, all the, the work that you did in U of V or whatever it was you were at, there's also the real world out there.
Yeah.
For example, that we give our Trivers tests in Spanish here, besides English, is part of that era. Why would you do that when none of the signs on the street are in the language you have to give the test in?
I never thought about that.
We don't give it in Armenian. We don't give it in Chinese, Japanese. And these are huge communities here in Southern California.
Yeah.
I mean, the largest Armenian community outside of Yerevan is in Glendale. And yet we don't give the driver's test in Armenian. Why would we insult the Spanish-speaking community and say, but the sign that says no left-hand turn except Saturdays and Sundays, RTD does is accepted, is not in Spanish.
Yeah. That's the whole thing. I don't know how to
Well, you have to. You know what? It's not a question.
It's not like a
It's not a question
problem.
Of, yeah. Well, it's not. It's not a question of disagreement or agreement. It's a question of thinking. Think about what it is. Then weigh the options.
Mm-hmm.
You know, everyone needs to really sort of strap on a pair and be brave. Be brave.
Yeah.
And face some of the things that are going to be uncomfortable for you, because that's where growth happens.
Yeah.
You know, that's where growth happens. If you just listen to, or you speak with, or you associate with only those people that you agree with, then you're not growing as a person.
You're so right. That's a big thing that
that's what all this is about.
And that's kind of what my dedication is.
Yeah.
Is in what I'm studying is anybody will tell you that, or like the Einstein quote when he said, "We don't solve problems with the same mentality that we had to when they were created."
Right, exactly, yeah.
So you can't keep trying the same thing.
No,
you can't keep trying to placate.
You can't keep doing this. You can't keep to do the same thing over and over and expect to get a different result is madness.
Yeah,
that's Albert Einstein.
Because it's not gonna.
It doesn't. You don't grow.
No, wasn't it something about like we can't solve problems?
Right,
and there's that too. From the same thinking.
For the same thing.
So we've got to completely think exactly. It's gonna feel different
because
it's got to feel that you can't just keep going back to those same people.
Right, exactly.
And asking them what they think.
Exactly right.
And that's what I think that this mindfulness movement of more and more people opening up to this. Is really going to focus on solutions that haven't been thought of before.
Haven't been thought of yet, right? Exactly.
People are, because like when you do the steps to like what I'm working on right now is balancing the 7 chakras, opening the 7 chakras up, studying first what the hell they are,
right,
and then how that can apply to every aspect to like make you. Man, you really do release a lot of pain, anger.
Yes.
You don't hide it.
Right.
But you understand it.
You understand it.
You kind of take it apart.
Right.
And then you exist with those pieces being okay and accepting them.
Yeah.
And it's all about like loving everything, loving other people, loving yourself.
Well, loving yourself is imperative.
But how many people don't do that?
Oh, many. And one of the things that is part of, I didn't come to these realizations through that vocabulary, but one of the things that I've learned over the years is that I consciously make sure that I do not let people into my life that are damaging.
Yeah.
I just can't do that. I won't put up with that anymore. I used to do it for professional reasons because the politics of where I worked demanded that I do that. But I learned over the years that, I was the one that went home with a stomach ache, not them.
Yeah.
And I was the one that was aggravated, and I was the one that was doing this.
And
I still have my standards, but I don't need to embrace or include people into my life.
That was the people you were working with?
Oh yeah, at the time, yeah. Well, it was 43 store chain. I mean, there was a lot of politics, as there is when you got 4 or more people pulled together. There's politics, but it was a slow process of changing for me because I was an enabler. I always thought I could fix things.
Yeah. I bet you spent a lot of time. I've been spending a ton of time at this job, just like really trying to fix things and how can I balance and juggle these things that don't kind of fit together, but I can problem solve them. I can make them all better. And then I realized that all of my brain power it should be going towards something that I truly think can help.
It's not
fix some
and what's
stuff.
nice about, and what's good about it is that what you learned is that it's not that it isn't important, but it has a place.
Yeah.
And it isn't my life. It isn't my life.
So you feel like you've been able to step back and you've got a peace of mind now that you enjoy having.
And not only that, not only a peace of mind to it, but I do my job better. Because it has a context now. Before it was all.
Well, this is a different job.
No, I've had this for 38 years, this job. And I had the department store thing for 20. But, you just had to learn to put it into balance. It's not, again, it's like when I work at the store at retail, I have a great time on the floor because I kid around with everybody and I do it in such a way with a certain amount of grace, but also they know that we're having a good time. As I used to say to somebody, I said, this isn't Palestine. It's just a little store in Larchmont. Have a good time,
Meaning?
Needing it isn't that important.
Okay.
It doesn't carry that much weight. I mean, everybody is so, they take themselves so seriously.
Oh, people take themselves seriously,
oh
don't
my
they?
God, don't they? Don't. I was like,
Yeah.
people. I used to work in a little store over another one of my accounts that's now closed. It was called A&B Stationery over in Studio City on Ventura Boulevard. One of the last of the old stores left. And I remember a woman coming into the store. I think I may be there about 6 years, and we had 6 months, and we had a long aisle just filled with pens, little ballpoint pens and marker pens, and they were in little pockets. They were all, so you didn't have to buy the box like you'd have to do over at Staples now. And Ethan, I watched her for an hour and a half, looking at each pen and sampling it on little pieces of paper, and deciding. And we weren't talking any more than $3 for a pen here. She was in that, Ethan. She was in that aisle for an hour and a half, and she finally came up to me and she said, "Which one do you think is best?" And I said, "Sweetie, there's not a pen here that's over $2. I said, "Do you know that you've been in that aisle for an hour and a half?" She said, "I have." I said, "Yeah." I said, "Who cares?" I said, "Buy them all." I said, "If they don't, throw them out." And she looked at me and I said, "I don't mean to put," she said, "Have I really been there an hour and a half?" I said, "Yeah." She said, "All right, I'll take them all." It came to like $6.
Oh my God.
Here's the rest of the story.
Yeah.
2 years later, now I'm an old pro in the store now,
Yeah.
She comes into the store. She looks completely different. And I'm thinking to myself, while she was going through all this, I said to myself, did she go through all this to pick her husband? And she came into the store and she said, "Do you remember me?" And I said, "Oh, gosh, sweet." She said, "I'm the woman that you talked to 2 years ago. How about the time I spent in the aisle?" I said, "Oh my God." I said, "I'm so sorry." She said, "Oh no," she said, "that was the best lesson I think I've ever had in my entire life." She said, "I went home and I spent a week almost being by myself, rethinking about the time that I spend wasting my time on stuff that I thought was important but isn't." And she said, "My marriage has improved." It was like John Smith receiving the Book of Mormon.
By you saying,
She
buy
said,
them all.
Yeah,
You
just
have
buy
just
them
spent
all.
an
Do you know how much
hour
time
of
you
your
spent doing
time.
it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Ethan, it isn't worth it.
I know.
About 19 years
The
ago,
time
I
that we put into
approached
stuff.
Fritz to be the manager of this building.
Yeah.
I didn't know we had the other buildings at the time.
Okay.
And I approached him, and I thought to myself, after it was in, and then that's when he told me, "Well, I got 5 other buildings. One's on Lucille, and another." I said, "Oh, Fritz, I didn't realize that." I said, "I was just talking about this building."
Yeah.
I said, "No." I said, "I dodged a bullet on that. I don't know how any of you even put up with that man."
Yeah.
Because he takes himself so seriously.
I know.
He takes himself so seriously. And, with the young couple
He's
that were...
he's actually a machine.
He is.
He's like he has a lot of fun. Who's waking up?
Oh.
He has a lot of fun in his personal life, but
Yeah.
he has absolutely no problem just being like machine.
Yeah, I know it.
I'll work with him so much.
Yeah.
For years.
Yeah.
And
So
I put in my notice.
So what's making the change happen for you?
What's making the change happen? I'm not able to I was able to kind of do this job as some kind of a weird support of my acting career.
Okay. Oh, I see.
This motivation and the family dynamic which as
changed radically.
Radically.
Is that?
Yeah, that kind of was like the glue that held everything together.
Well, sure. Yeah.
And so now it's made me reevaluate how much of that am I spending an hour and a half looking at pens. That's how I feel look how much time I'm putting into A, this job, and B, auditioning and trying to get parts.
Yes.
And it's like, yeah,
and nobody,
damn right,
nobody around to take care of him.
Yeah, I would love to get some amazing work as an actor, but the time.
Sure. Always. Always.
Yeah. So
Well,
it just made me evaluate exactly like that lesson that you told me.
Yeah. Well,
really,
and
I'm just like, no, my time, no.
Yeah.
So it's the last
it's always,
2 months have been this amazing transition.
Yeah, and it's a me time for yourself. That's you can't interact well with others if you're not interacting with yourself well.
Right.
It's just impossible because that interaction with others has to come from somewhere. It has to come from you first.
Yeah.
Because when it all ends up, or Dan left, or Morgan's left, or whatever it is, it's only you looking at your mirror in the morning shaving.
Mm-hmm.
That's all that's left, and you got to make that work. You still got to make the base work.
Make the base work.
The base has to work first.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
And then you can reach out to others. You know. But,
there you go.
You know, then you can reach out. But if you're not in a good space for yourself, then you're just don't even bother. Don't even bother.
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing too is that.
But what about if you don't notice that? Because
that's the problem.
Because I got so busy.
Yeah.
And I was so committed and dedicated to a few of these goals.
Yes, right.
That I was willing to kind of put these different compartments side by side and just rush with them.
Yes, right.
But they weren't all
weren't
unified.
Right. They weren't meshing into something that worked. Yes, exactly.
It was just from strength alone. I was able to make and no, I don't have. The life is too short to actually pretend that I like this job. Pretend I like that guy that I work for.
Yeah.
You know.
But what are you going to do about the rent situation? Can you support a rent on your own?
Oh no, I'm leaving town.
Oh, you're leaving town?
Yeah, we're leaving town.
Oh, well, it is leaving then, yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Because I got to tell you, it took him a long time to find somebody to replace the couple that were here. To get you. I mean, it was several months, and that was unusual for him because he never ever took that long to find somebody. So I thought, well, okay. Oh, so are you going back east then?
Yeah.
Because your brother just moved out here from Florida to Orange County.
Yeah, he sure did.
God. Oh.
Yeah, but
no good deed goes unpunished.
I know. But I have folks in Colorado. I have folks in Florida.
Oh, okay.
I have folks in Virginia. I'm not sure really. I'm just trying to
Okay. Well, you'll figure it out.
Kind of develop. I don't know if you've realized, but you can't. I still try to keep it looking like a home for these last few weeks that I'm going to be here. But I've been selling. Like if you look in the closets, they're all empty. Like there's almost no furniture. I have an air bed because somebody just bought my bed. Yeah. So
I see Jack's room. Very rarely do I look to see with the blinds open anymore now. They've been open a little bit more than I remember them being.
Yeah?
Yeah. I see the lamp on now and the word Jack still.
Because I sold some furniture in there that kind of made it more difficult to open the curtains.
Oh, I see.
So now that furniture's gone, I can just easily go in there and...
Right, yeah. Well, good for you. Well, you know what? It's a good journey.
Yeah.
And it's time.
Yeah.
Yeah. You've been devoted to all these things, and you're still young enough to be able to make this really happen and still, have results that will still be helpful for you. I can't make those kind of changes now in my life, but I did that already, so I'm pleased with where I'm at now.
You're pleased with where you're at.
I am pleased with where I'm at.
And it's cool that you said, the thing about shaving.
Yeah.
Because, what was the thing? What did you say about shaving?
Well, basically, it's when whatever it is that's around you doesn't support you or leaves or whatever it is, it's only you in the morning shaving, looking at yourself in the mirror. That's all that's really left.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought to myself, fuck, I'm it.
Yeah.
I'm it. I have no parents. My parents died in the early 2000s, late 1990s. They're gone. I have no brothers and sisters. I've got to make it work.
Yeah.
And it has to, I have to make it work in a way that works also for me. Where I'm not stressing out and I'm not, oh my God, I got to do this. Oh my God, I got to do that. I got to be here and got to be here. I did all of that, and I don't need to do that anymore. And it's great. And I'm still alive. I still have a lovely.
So you actually do the work to come around to that.
Oh, I did. Yes, and it was a lot of work for me.
It was a lot of work, huh?
Yeah, it was a lot of work for me.
How did you do that work? Were you going to church? Were you reading?
No, I just I had a boyfriend for a couple of years that was what was referred to as a dry drunk. He had all the behavior of an alcoholic, but he didn't drink. And we'd go to AA meetings.
We'd say that's bipolar.
Yeah.
Right?
Now it's that's how eventually it was.
So for a while it was like he's a dry drunk. He's a maniac.
Yeah. And he was.
Doesn't drink a drop.
Yeah, but he doesn't drink a drop, and he was a great manipulator. He made you feel guilty. Well, why aren't you joining me in this? And and I'd say, well, let's. Well, I don't want to go. I said, all right, and I'd sit around the house, thinking that's what he wanted, instead of saying, okay, then I'm going to go. And what I had to learn was I had to say, I'm going to go. You want to stay home by yourself? That's up to you.
Yeah.
You're going to go. It's like the guy that I moved into this apartment with, although we weren't a pair, it was truly a roommate situation, but he got all bent out of shape after about 6 months. Well, it was every time I got home, there was an argument, and I said, Joe, I don't want you to be unhappy. You see that door? I said, it's a French door handle. I said, what you do is you pull down it and you turn it down. I said, and you open it. I said, and you walk
You're
out.
a smart ass.
And you close it behind you. I said, I don't want you to be unhappy. I said, leave. But what about the rent? I said, I'll figure out a way to pay the $950 it was back then.
Right.
For apartment 313.
There's an element of that you got to make sure that you're always in touch with.
Yeah.
I'll figure it out.
Yeah.
That
and I did.
That spirit that says, I'll figure that out.
And you want to know
Because,
something? It's
yeah.
it's like that last line and Gone with the Wind. I'll think about that tomorrow. And you know what, Sonny? I'm still around. I have all my fingers in my toes.
Yeah.
I have a beautiful apartment. I'm not in arrears. I don't have the tax people coming after me.
Yeah.
I figured it out,
Yeah.
and it's here. And
Yeah.
you will.
So you've known when you're to not compromise.
Exactly right.
And
Exactly
you
right.
just
Yeah.
kind of that
And
takes
you-
some
and-
faith.
That takes some faith, and you also have
In
to know
yourself.
when to let go of stuff that was important to your life at the time, but you can't support that anymore, like getting rid of your furniture and all the rest.
Mm-hmm.
It's time to divulge myself of the obligation.
Mm-hmm.
Flush it away. You know, if I needed to sleep on a futon, it
Yeah.
was going to be designed by by Anne Klein.
Yeah.
But it was still, I had to do it. I took the bus many years to go downtown to go to work, and not to take on the expense of having a car with gasoline.
Mm-hmm.
And I had a Triumph. I had TR6. And
Oh.
that car sat in the garage for 3 years. I wouldn't drive it. I walked everywhere, or I took the bus.
Mm-hmm.
You have to make it happen, and it worked eventually.
Cool. So you like downsized.
I
That's what I'm
downsized.
doing.
Yeah.
Is just
Yeah,
downsizing.
you have to
but it
strip it
feels
down.
darn good, you know.
It does. It's, you know what? It's cathartic.
Yeah. Hey,
It's
that's a
liber-
word that I
yeah.
haven't heard in my
Yeah, it's cathartic.
Little,
It's like people who garden feel better. It's cathartic. These things are important, but they come with a baggage.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and it's like, oh God, I got rid of that. That feels so great.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And it works, and it works. And you have to keep it in proportion. You just can't divulge it all and throw Jack out the window with the bathwater. You know, can't be doing that.
Jack is first, right?
Oh, absolutely. And I have to say to you, I know, is that too cute?
Mm-hmm.
God. I have to say to you, watching you from across the corridor,
Mm-hmm.
that my hat is off to you in the way you handled this with your son. You are to be congratulated. He is a charmer, first of all, and you were an involved dad to begin with,
Mm-hmm.
but now that you are the parent.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, I think it's wonderful that you get him dressed up and he looks great and he's cute and he zips around and, you know, and it's a happy house. You can tell that he's a happy child.
Yeah.
He's a happy little boy.
Yeah,
And he shows it. And he's just like, when you stop by at the window, you know, a couple days ago, you know, I was reading, you know, he's touching the screen and all that. He's on this wonderful adventure. He's on this wonderful world of exploration of everything, the leaves, the trees, the
Oh, my
fountain,
gosh.
the grandfather clock, the screens. And you're great for all of that. And my hat is off to you.
Thank you.
That's been, when you told me what happened, I was
Yeah.
like, if you weren't straight, I would have given you a hug. But I thought, wow. And I come from a place, Ethan, where my parents divorced each other 3 times. So I know what you're going through.
Yeah.
I know what you're going through, because I went through that 2 other times besides the one.
Hmm.
And so, you know, living in a household with only one parent,
Mm-hmm.
I know what that is.
Mhm.
So that's what my, you know, kudos to you for handling this
Thank
so
you.
beautifully. Really, you really are to be, you know, a lot of young men today in our world, despite 40 years of the feminist movement, don't seem to have learned anything. I think that movement aimed their energies at the wrong gender. You know.
Well, I appreciate that, and
Yeah.
I definitely try. It's hard, man. It's hard.
Yes, it is.
It's
No, it is, absolutely. Of course it is.
at this age,
Yes.
he goes to everything that's trouble.
Yeah. Yeah, well, the terrible twos.
Yeah.
That's why they're called that.
He's got 6 months left
I know.
to be 2.
I know, but he's a...
That's one of the reasons I'm
He's a charmer.
trying to bail out and
Yeah.
get around some
Well, you
other
know what?
family.
Yeah, absolutely. No, and you have to do what you need to do, but that's good.
Yeah.
At least you have that. You came to a conclusion that is going to be helpful. It'll shed all of this.
Yeah.
Because this is a weight now.
You are intuitive.
Yeah.
You got it. Well, I mean, you
I'm old
observe
enough to be
some
your
things
father.
too.
I'm old enough to be your father. Give me a break.
Have you ever heard the phrase podcast? Do you know what that is?
Oh yes,
Okay. Do you listen to any of them?
No, I don't.
Okay.
But I do know what it is.
Yeah, nobody listens to this one either. But, except my friend Brian.
Before you get into speaking of another, I looked at your site again on was it IDM site? Is that what it is?
Yeah,
Yeah.
IMDb.
IMDb or something like that. And I was looking at your little trailers at the bottom, all the little clips of your films.
Yeah.
You had picked up a lot of weight. I didn't even recognize you in some of your earlier films. I said, "That's Ethan." I mean, you had this. It was all in your face.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And nobody would have looked at me and said, that guy's fat.
No, you weren't fat,
But
but you had a very pudgy kind of a face, and I thought.
well, now that you see what I look like now,
Yeah.
I think you got it for
I
sure.
thought, well, I was looking at some of the earlier
Soft-
films from
soft features.
2014 or 2012, whatever it was.
Mhm.
It was like, where's Ethan in this? And then suddenly dawned on me, I thought, oh my God, that's it. Boy, I said, no wonder he lost the weight. Anyway, go back to about your podcast thing.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Watch. Okay, I'm gonna call hi ho. Hi ho.
Too cute.
Yeah, too cute, right?
Yeah.
Fred, thank you for doing this.
Oh, you're
I hope
welcome.
this is usable because it sure was fun. Now, if it's over 40 minutes, oh, it's an hour. It might be unusable.
All right, well, edit it.
That's what I don't do. All
I'm
right.
ready for my close-up Mr. Mill.
Thank you, for sure. Okay? Bye, Fred.
All right, bye-bye.